Hello, and welcome to Character Class. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the World of Darkness games, one of the ones that I know a lot of people like and a lot of people enjoy playing. So I'm putting it out there right now. Some of you may not like what I have to say about this particular game, but we're going to go on it, and I'm going to give you 5 tips. 5 tips for playing Hunter the Reckoning. Now, Hunter the Reckoning is one of those games that's all about uh, mortals fighting back against all of the monsters in the world of darkness. The vampires, the werewolves, the mages, the changeling, the wraiths, and so on. And it's one of those ones where they all of a sudden these mortals are imbued with powers and whatnot. And that's kind of interesting. That's kind of fun. But I know a lot of people like playing it as um, pretty much a lot of people play Hunter with combat monster in mind, uh, or the term that I've heard used, murder hobo, where they just go and it's lots of combat and stuff. So, as I said, you may not like some of the things I have to say, but we're going to get into it. So, number 5 is that particular tip is deals with it can be this one can be done with any of the World of Darkness games or any role playing game in general. But I find for Hunter, it is one of those things that is very much, it's a little more important when dealing with this system. And number 5, that tip is that OOC, out of character knowledge, should not equal in character knowledge. Now, the reason why I say for Hunter is because it applies more is because it Hunter is all about fighting back against all of the other World of Darkness monsters. And being the 6th or so system that they put out, they've got all these other 5 systems that people have been playing and learning about and whatnot. So you're going into Hunter with more knowledge of all of the other supernaturals, and you can't let that filter in to what your character would know, because your character will be going up against all of these monsters. Now, granted, uh, the monsters that are in the Hunter the Reckoning book are not exactly the equivalent of what's in all of the other World of Darkness. It's one of the things that White Wolf did in the World of Darkness thing is that they will have other supernatural creatures in the back of the core book where they say, yeah, there's vampires, like you're playing vampires, and it's like, yeah, there's werewolves and mages out there, but all of the powers that they are given in the back of the vampire book are vampire equivalent powers. They basically say that, well, this werewolf has a dominate of level 3, or this mage has a obfuscate of level 4. It's not exactly the equivalent, but they kind of mesh it together like that. Now, a lot of people out there like to basically put all of the systems and mash them together and basically have them exist in the same world. That requires a lot of house ruling too. But because you're coming into it knowing more about these other supernaturals, you're going to know more about, you're going to have all this knowledge in your head, but your character may not know it. So you need to draw that line, that sharp divide, and always keep it in mind that as a character, your character may not know things that you do. So you can't have them act on stuff that they wouldn't know. It's a fine line to walk, but it's one you need to keep an eye out for, especially in Hunter the Reckoning. Number 4. Number 4 tip. Be scared. Now, what I mean by that is that a lot of the World of Darkness tends to be horror themed, with vampire, with werewolf, mage, wraith, even changeling. even changeling. There is that undercurrent of horror because it's the World of Darkness is a modern, uh, urban gothic horror role playing setting in general, and with Hunter especially, they have a perfect system, a perfect backdrop to let that horror element really shine through. And lots of players out there I know, not all of them, but lots of them don't really focus on that. Uh, they kind of focus on they what their characters can do, and they have their character like burst into this decrepit old uh, mansion or this rundown old warehouse trying to hunt something down, and the monster that they are going after gets the drop on them and whatnot. And as a player, and even as a character perhaps, that character doesn't get phased. They don't react. There's none of this. There's none of the horror element in things. Uh, and I really, as a storyteller, I really love it when I can make players be unnerved, be creeped out, be a little scared for their characters. I like to bring that horror element home quite a lot. So that is one of my tips for playing Hunter. It can be for other systems in the White Wolf one, but for Hunter especially, you let let yourself be scared because your characters are supposed to be normal people with sudden magic powers. Not all of them, not even a lot of them, are going to be like, I'm invincible now. Oh look, it's a werewolf. La di da, let's kill it. Get that horror element going, even if it's in little minor things, little minor characterizations that you use. It's always a good thing to do. Makes for great stories. Uh, Number three, that tip is that relationships are a plus. Uh, Now, Hunter is one of those things. I'm going to be delving into it a little more deeply in the number one tip that I have here, but with Hunter, you're playing a normal character, a mortal, who has a life, who has friends, who has family. Um, you're also going to be meeting other hunters, banding together to fight these monsters and whatnot that are kicking around your city or wherever. And there's going to be relationship dynamics in all of that, especially with your characters' friends and family, with your characters' other hunting buddies, I guess you could say. Uh, and having those relationships be a central part of your character is nothing but a good thing. It not only allows the storyteller lots of ways to throw little plot hooks at you through your friends and family, through the other player characters, and the relationships that you have with them or with NPCs, um, but it also allows for you as players to do cool things, to create your own plot hooks in a way. Uh, it's nothing but a plus having relationships, having backstory and friends and family for your characters to be uh, to be connected to. One of the things in particular, I'm currently playing in a Vampire the Masquerade game, and as a player, not as a storyteller. And my player has, because I was creating him from scratch when my old one died, I was able to give him a large herd that he built up over the years because this particular character has been in the city. I had a plausible reason for him not to have been around for most of the recent game that I'd already played through with my old character, but they they ended up uh, he had a large herd that he's built up. I believe I had like 4 dots in herd, if I recall. So it was like 30 people, and I had a list of them all and what they did, how my character met them, and I provided that to the storyteller, and he used that against me by having one of my herd killed and then another of my herd attacked, and my character was going off the rails, thinking that somebody was trying to strike back at him through his herd, and was calling them all and letting them all know, be careful. Um, and then a couple days later, another one of his herd had gotten killed. So that's two dead and one injured out of his herd. And he he basically turned over heaven and earth to find out who it was. He thought it might have been one of his enemies that I have a flaw for, but it ended up being that the one person that was killed, the two members of his herd that were killed, uh, there were separate incidents, and the guy that got beat up in his herd was also a separate incident. It was just a bunch of coincidence, but because I didn't know that, because my character is very concerned about his herd. He's a very personable social vampire. Um, he was he was going nuts, uh, and it made for just a great bit of storytelling over a couple of sessions, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. So that's the sort of thing I'm talking about with relationships. They allow for so much fun out there. So relationships are a good thing. You don't always have to have your character be a loner. Uh, it's better if you don't, at least in my opinion. Number two. Number two is that in-character drama is a good thing. Uh, Now, every group is going to have drama pop up from time to time. Usually, it's best if it's in game and not out of game. But there is out of character drama that pops up, trouble between players and whatnot. That's the sort of thing that storytellers and players have to work through together to kind of smooth things out. Lay down the ground rules, as I said in one of my previous episodes, I believe, for new GMs. You want to lay down those limits and whatnot. But in character drama is another thing entirely, and it can be fantastic. You can do some amazing things with ramping up the drama, and Hunter the Reckoning in particular is a good way to do that because, as I said, with relationships, if you've got your friends and your family, you've got other NPCs that you care about, your fellow hunters. Um, since it's all normal people who just happen to have magic powers all of a sudden, fighting against these monsters. When these monsters start fighting back uh, and whatnot, things can go amazing. You can create some serious tension and some serious drama, and that is always super fun. So keep an eye on doing that on the in-character drama. It's always a good thing. And for my number one tip, there's a lot. This is the one that I thought a lot of people were going to be a little upset with me about. Now, hear me out. My number one tip is no snowflakes. No special snowflakes out there. And there's a reason for that. I understand that a lot of people like to push the boundaries and go very, very specific into what they want to create for a character. That they want to have this, they want to be able to do that. I understand that entirely. And I understand that a lot of these types of characters, a lot of these personalities are, for lack of a better word, they are realistically normal. I mean, having a badass ex-military sniper, I mean, there are people that are ex-military snipers out there that are badass. Those exist. I'm not saying they don't. But for Hunter the Reckoning, I don't think you should play them. Because one of the things they have as a suggestion in the Hunter book is to play somebody normal, to play like an English teacher, a stay-at-home mom, a soccer coach, a guy who works in a convenience store for minimum wage, the waitress from the diner down the street, the gas station attendant. Normal people, normal folks, to be your characters. who suddenly get these powers and suddenly see monsters and it's like, I got to do something about this. That's their suggestion. I would say, I would make it a very strong suggestion that you do this, because the reason being, the way Hunter is set up, being such a doubling down on the horror themed element, you have normal people involved, and as long as you have these normal people doing their normal lives and everything, uh, you introduce that element of horror into it, and it just becomes that much more tense, that much more biting for the horror. So going going a normal route for any characters is really the best option. And if you go for like a special snowflake type, as I said, if you go for the badass military sniper or the super martial arts man who can kick serious ass, or the gun nut who has a whole bunch of weapons stored under his basement because he thinks the end of the world is coming. These are all realistically normal character concepts, but they don't really fit in, I find, with the way Hunter should be run. And this is just my opinion on how it should be run. But I think Hunter should be the kind of game where it really is normal people, people who aren't prepared for it, for people who are always in over their head, at least for the first while, until they start learning and they start taking things up and kind of going against the grain of their normal lives. That is where I find Hunter really shines. And that's where I think most people should be doing their characters at. Now, it's completely up to your storyteller and you as the player as to how you want to do this. That's fine. These are just my suggestions for what I think, my little tips for Hunter the Reckoning. So, thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap. Ring that notification bell there to be kept apprised of when I do new videos. Usually try and get at least one video a week, but I've been doing pretty good so far on my new schedule of putting out 5 videos a week, Monday through Friday. That's going to be that's kind of going to be the way I do things from here on. I'm going to try to anyways. So please be patient if there are some weeks that don't have 5 videos, time constraints and whatnot, but I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best. So do all that, and until next time, my friends, you keep on rolling, and I'll see you next time.